Hey, Michelle. Hi.
Hello.
So Eric was doing what now? He knew that we're going to talk about sex part two,
Yes,
and he's
he's
into that.
in red. He's in all red. Well, he's got blue jeans on, but he's got a red cap on, a red t-shirt, and blue jeans, and he's in bare feet. And just as we were starting, and he and I were just kind of mingling our energies as we do, and he shows me his feet, and he expands his feet so they look really, really big, and then shows me like stinky, like flies and like
Oh, yeah. He
like
was
he's
not.
trying to, yeah.
He was not known for the cleanest feet. I don't know why I get this all the time. It's okay. We can live. All right.
Oh.
So we're going to start with this. What are the spiritual benefits of having sex?
Hmm. Okay, so Eric first is saying, he's like,
Oh, hi. I love
Mom,
you. I
I
love you.
love you.
I know. You know I love you. Sorry.
He says, I love you too. And he's like, okay, this is the good stuff. This is the good stuff. He says, so there is two ways that we can look at sex, and we can look at it with spirituality. And he says the one way is to look at it to understand that when we are combining our energies together, and because he says, speaking as human beings in the physical, when we join together, that is the highest form of okay, he says, it brings us to the same sense as if we're connecting with source. Physical orgasm and sexual union energy creates that sensation. That's why he says it can be very easy to be addicted to sex, because if we're not connecting to source ourselves, we can find it through the act of physical connection through sex. But he also says that once that connection has happened, then it starts to resort back to wherever that person's baseline is. But the purpose of it, of course, he says, not just for procreation, it actually is a spiritual practice as well.
Cool. I would say one person asked, what are good ways one can use their natural sex drive to manifest?
Mm. He says this is awesome because think about what we just said about our vibration. So when you are in that vibration, so when you're having sex, he goes, everything else goes out the window. He goes, think about it. All of your worries, absolutely everything goes out the window for that brief moment. So we've got that high vibration. He says, ride with it. Again, it can be part of be part of a practice, that having sex can be part of your spiritual practice. And it's about taking advantage of the energies.
Okay, oh, that's interesting. All right,
Mhm.
what are Eric's insights on masturbation? Let's see if Michelle blushes on this one.
He says, it's awesome.
Okay, all right. All right, so can you talk about the spiritual aspect? I don't know, just throw me a bone here,
Well,
Eric.
he says, really, he goes, let's think about it. There's of course the physical component to it, where it's a release. He
Oh,
says,
yeah.
just like crying, it's a release.
All
It's
right.
something that our body naturally does, and we shouldn't be ashamed of it. Just the same as
Ah,
crying, we shouldn't be ashamed to release our tears, and we shouldn't be ashamed to talk about masturbation, to say that we do it, to say that it's normal. It is. It's a completely normal process for the human being.
awesome. So, what can a woman do after menopause to get her desire for sex back? Sex back. Is it safe to take hormone replacement therapy for it?
Yes, he says, yes, that is something that for some people that will work. But he also says, let's go back to the whole being. So the sexual desire is just one part. So he says, we can't just focus on that one bit. We have to understand that if we're looking to get our sexual desire back, we want to go to the roots of how we feel about absolutely everything. Because when we do that, when we focus on the whole of how we feel, the whole going inside at that period of time in our life, he says, then the act of desire for sex will naturally start to come back to us.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. So, what is the spiritual insight and aspect of homosexuality? Why do many people judge others for being themselves?
He says, well, this can get into a whole whack of conversations here, but understand that there is a religious component. He's just saying
Oh, yeah.
there, if we look at the were there homosexuals back in the times where the Bible was written? Yes. Has there always been that component to life? Yes, because he says really, there's nothing wrong with it. It's our who we are inside. He's also showing the divine masculine, divine feminine being in each one of us, and how that can be balanced differently in human beings. And so when we walk away from say the structure of what we were taught in society or what we believed was right, it can be very difficult for us. It really tests us. It
Yeah.
really, that's where judgment comes from. And he says this time that we're in right now is allowing people the opportunity to push past judgments.
Oh, that's good. Well, I mean, it seems like it was more accepted way back when. What happened? And why do various religions forbid it? Islam, and I mean more than just Christianity, right? Why is
Well,
that? What do they want to control? What do the religious leaders? I mean, what's in it for them?
he says procreation. That
Oh,
was one of the first ones, procreation. So a man lying with a man, woman lying with a woman is not going to result in procreation and result in having, he's showing like a man with the family having, you
yeah.
know, right.
Well, that's pretty narrow-minded. Think
And
that's
yes,
only for that.
he says it's also part of evolution as well.
Yeah.
So evolution, so when we break everything down, it's all as one, but when we break it down and we look at the topic of sex, we understand that sex has gone through an evolution itself, and sexuality
Yeah.
with human beings, with animals, has also gone through an evolution as well.
Really? Wait. What has gone through evolution?
Yes, he said that. I just said,
Animals with animals?
yes,
Sex
yes,
or humans having sex with animals?
yes, yes, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll talk about those fetishes in a minute. But you can't wait. All right, let's see. Also, okay, why are parents so reluctant to talk about sex with their adolescent children? Uh, well, I mean, obviously they got hangups, and probably part of that is society slash religion telling them that it's shameful, shameful.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly what he just said. He says, yes,
Yeah.
mom. Exactly what was just said when we were talking about society. And we look at how the belief systems of society and feeling that sex is shameful, having say that it's sex is only sacred between man and woman, and that it's something that's not to be talked about. It's something that is dirty because of um, judgments. And over the period of time, he said that became harder and harder to talk about. And when we look at parents right now, what patterns did they grow up in?
Yeah.
What patterns did their parents have, and how were they spoken to about sex? So he says this is a really good time for all parents that are in this stage of their child's life to really look at, how did I feel when I was that age, and how was it approached to me, and how can I change that to approach my children now to help inform them with the knowledge and awareness that we have at this time.
Now I just throw that Dr. Ruth book at him. Here, go. Let me know if you have questions. No, I'm kidding. All right, so let's talk more about the evolution of sexuality because, like I was saying, back in the Roman days and all that, we went to, Rennie and I went to, what's it called? Vesuvius, Pompeii, and homosexuality was clearly just totally fine, but it wasn't always about love. It's just like, I want the pleasure. And of course, there were, same sex love also. Um, but then religion murked up things and they didn't allow that. But you see the same thing in the animal kingdom too.
Mhm.
I mean, homosexuality. So, but just for physical, not necessarily love. But anyway, just go ahead and tell me about the way it has evolved.
Well, he says if you think about how our brains have evolved, how our minds have evolved over time. So, sex in the beginning, so if we go back to ancient times, that procreation happened, but sex was also, it was this natural desire. She says, yeah, mom, like just like how you said, when there are animals or beings running through the jungle, or in the prehistoric times, this was all by urge.
Yeah.
Brain was, it was primal, it was not understood in any other way. So the evolution of sex has really been going for full circle, much like many other things in our society and world.
Hmm.
So it went from the primal, the instinct, which again we can compare that to our own instinct with everything, our intuitiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So we think about the primal urges and then how that then evolved to, as our minds and our brains evolved, we became more aware. We became more aware of our cultural conditions, um, rules, experiences. And so that's where people started to create what we'll call hang-ups,
Yeah.
ideas,
Yeah.
rules, things that should and shouldn't happen. So as each human being would become integrated and evolution occurred over time, the new human being would be born into wherever sex was at that time or what the idea was, and they would work through that evolution from where it was left off from the one before. So it is this cycle, and we're now coming back around to the understanding that sex is not a bad thing. Sex is not about books and certificates and agreements. That there's a big difference between um, feeling or yes, judgment. He just said a big difference between the way of perceiving it with judgment and then looking at it from the truth of what it is, and that we are natural beings that do desire sex other than reasons of procreation.
Okay. So, how does Lucas, Eric? Once you tell me that, uh, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that bisexuality is kind of the more evolved sexual orientation because it's like love is love is love. But are you still sticking with that, or did I misremember?
Yes, yes. Um, he says, Mom, the thing is, uh, there's something that some people may recognize as being heard is what's going on with kids these days. Why can't they make up their mind whether they want to be with a boy or a girl? And so he said, that's the truth. Love is love is love. It
Mm.
really doesn't matter.
So they're getting
Not
that.
about, yes, yes.
Okay.
And he's talking about the generation of teenagers at this time are very much of this generation to change the evolution and ideas of what sex is and sex and gender.
Okay. So, what is the relationship between the act of sex and love?
He says, do you want to talk about when we combine the two, or if
Well,
we're
I
just
don't know.
talking about it in
What do you think?
erotica?
What do you think the peeps need to know out there?
Well, he says sex combined with love, well, that's the highest vibration there can be.
Ah.
He says, so that's why, okay, break it down into words a little bit, Eric. So he says, if sex, when we focus on that as erotica, that is a self pleasure. So it's more thinking about the self, and that leads to separation. When we talk about oneness, and that's what we are evolving to, is oneness, then we talk about the fact that sex with somebody that we love brings out all kinds of enlightening experiences within our being. And he says this is that part of the sexual practice. When you're with somebody that you love, you're able to work on this together as a, not only a practice, but as a deeper way of knowing each other, as a deeper way of connecting, because then it becomes mind, body, and soul. So it's a completely different experience than when if we just talk about sex as for pleasure in itself, say with a partner that we're not in love with.
Okay, I got that. So really, it's almost like the person wants to occupy the same place as the other person, that closeness, that oneness.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's transmuting. He shows me light as two columns of light, and he shows them intertwining with each other.
Okay. Somebody says, I don't know how to ask this question, but once I lost my V card, I guess virginity, at 16, it changed my whole perspective of life, people, and what was true. Does that mean the loss of innocence? You gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, he says, for you, in particular, for the one that's asking this question, that was a really, really big moment, and that was meant to be for you. Not everybody has that perspective towards it. So look at it as each individual has something in their life that is going to be awakening or moving for one reason or another. So he's just saying that this particular person, this was meant to be an event.
Okay.
To help them look at the world differently. But he says, is it a loss of innocence? Well, that's perspective.
Yes.
It really is perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this person wants to know, what do our souls look like when they are having sexual relationships? Do they merge? I mean, aura changes? I don't know.
He shows the colors, so I can see multiple colors. And it, how would I describe this? It looks like a lava lamp that has electricity all over it, and it's a very it does intertwine and it blends, and I'm not seeing any physicality. I'm only seeing, I can't see the difference between one or the other, and he says that's because there's not. It's all as one, and that's our natural state.
Wow, that's so interesting. What is it like to have sex as spirits? And also, when you're in spirit, are you both male and female, or can you choose?
Oh, he says, sure, we could choose if we want to experience anything from the perspective of a gender, but there really is no male or female component. We have both. It's genderless, so to speak. But having sex in spirit is the pure connection. Okay, there's no disconnection. So he says, if you can imagine, we are able to experience it on a higher level than physicality. So it's like an orgasm on steroids, he said.
Ah, okay. Interesting. All right. So this person says, I've heard that once you have had sex with someone, you then have a lifelong cord attached and a connection with them. Is this true? Never heard of that.
He says yes, but any relationship that invokes emotion between two human beings has a lifelong cord with it. But yes, he says that is true. So a person that he says it's energetic. So understand that we are all connected energetically, but think of it this way: when we have sex with somebody, then that cord lightens up, or it becomes what's the right word for it, Eric? Like electrical. It's got a vibration to it. So it's something that exists within us that connects us to that other person, and dependent on what the reasons are, because he says it's about the intent of why the sex happened, is the best way to say it, because what the intent is, that energetic cord, how it will affect you. I don't know if that's making sense how he's saying it, but he's showing me pictures
Okay.
of how we connect.
Okay. Does the Kundalini awakening have anything to do with sex?
Yes. He's talking about the Kundalini energy being in the seat or the pelvis area, that it pools in that area. He's talking about, okay, he says tantric sex is something that is a spiritual practice that
Oh
you
yeah, I was going
can,
to ask about that. So good.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
you can work with the Kundalini. So he says that that is a sexual energy, a creative force, life force.
Wow. Interesting. Is having an orgasm a motivator for committing heinous crimes?
Okay, so he's like showing me like, if spark plugs are put in the wrong, like if we're pulling out spark plugs and then we go and put them back in the wrong spot, it's going to misfire in a vehicle. So he's saying that this is kind of the same way that, it's like a something that is patterned within that being, that they feel a sense of excitement. And this may not be completely from this life. There's remnants that can come from other lives as well. But it's just, he's saying it is what it is. But um, it's not something that they can control.
Okay.
It's not something that they can stop from happening.
Okay.
They have to stop the behavior that leads to it.
Okay. With sex, you unify the polarity and create infinity. Can you then say that infinity gives birth to new life? I don't know. There's a bunch of questions I don't really understand. I think it's from the same person, but
He just showed me the infinity sign and just said that it's like, he's giving the example of the chicken and the egg and just saying it's continuous, if that makes
okay.
any sense to what that is. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Here's a funny one. What do the spirits of sex symbols, like famous people, do that have so many people masturbating over them?
But
Oh,
okay,
are they
so,
aware of them, and do the spirits of famous people ever participate?
well, Erik says now, and he's doing this with his chin. And he says that could get into a really interesting conversation. Not, yes, they are aware, but not in the way that our human minds would imagine that they're aware, and not in the same intent and purpose, because it's not being looked upon in the same way. He's showing that there is some sort of connection between them and the human being, but again, it's a different perspective on sex or on masturbation, not the way it would be thought of from the person that was doing it.
I guess it's the same question. What happens energetically to the living person when you have someone fantasizing over you, a living person?
Okay. Erik said depending on the connection between the two people, so and on the thoughts, so if the thoughts are sexual and positive in nature, that person may, okay, tell me this one first though. So, okay, so the sexual thoughts positive in nature, depending on the connection, that person could get sexual feelings. That person could have some responses in connection, or have some thoughts in connection to that person. So he's talking about two partners
Okay.
being apart from each other and being able to communicate that's possible. But he's also, what he was just saying to me too, is he goes, have you ever had somebody think about you that you don't want thinking about you? And he goes,
Oh,
yeah, ick.
no.
Like it's kind of an icky feeling. So he says that you can get a sense of that as well. It depends on how sensitive you are
Okay.
to receive that too.
All right. On a soul level, what is the nature of prostitution? I don't know about nature or spiritual mission, or I don't know. Well, just answer it in a way that would benefit us.
He says, let's think about what it is and think about all the scenarios without giving one blanket statement as to why that individual would be doing that or be in that situation, because there are so many different life paths that brought them to that. But it's to love themselves, truly to love themselves and to find themselves, to absolutely remove everything. It's about self-worth, finding self-worth, self-acceptance, um, being able to find value in themselves. And so it ends up being a path that gets taken to be able to come back out with the value of understanding the self and have deep respect from the self to be able to have a life past that. So he's saying that there are a lot of very highly evolved souls that go through these type of scenarios
Hmm.
because it's a very challenging, he says, multi-level topic. There's a lot more to it. It's not really just one answer, but it's all about self-acceptance and self-love, to give it the short answer.
Yeah, because there could be addiction involved. There's domination by a pimp. There's, there's the risk of being beaten up by a job. I mean, there's so many levels to it,
So much.
but it's
Yeah.
all it's pretty much to learn how to love oneself, which is pretty much the most important
Well,
thing.
because he just says, just to add, Mom, let's understand that most prostitutes didn't choose to do that based on just, hey, guess what? I think I'm going to be a prostitute.
Yeah, it's like
There are so many
honey,
different
what do you
things
want to
that
be
come
when you
into
grow up?
it.
I want to be a prostitute, mommy. No, I don't think
Yes.
that's.
No, not at all. He says it's a layered and many different, like you said, different reasons that bring them there.
Yeah, that's awful. Okay, all right. Well, there's nothing bad or good. It's okay. Why do transgenders switch genders? Is there a spiritual purpose or something to learn, or perhaps are they teaching society something? Maybe
Being
all of
who
the
they
above.
really are. Being who they really are, because the soul and who they truly feel that they are does not match the body that they're in.
Mm.
And so they're here to show society that they don't need to fit in a box. They don't need to be a certain way to be accepted. They don't need to follow what the expectations are that everybody else has for them, parents, caregivers, society, who thinks that they should be. And they're here to learn how to accept themselves and to be able to be themselves despite all of that.
Well, one of the most important things that I tell my children is let people be who they are. I mean, that is just so important. I mean, we don't do that. Society as a collective doesn't do that, and that's why so many people have trouble finding their authenticity, finding who
Yeah.
their real selves are. So yeah, let people be who they are.
Yes.
It's a lot easier that way anyway. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about are different fetishes. You're gonna get through this, Michelle. Foot fetish. What
My
is the
face is
deal
getting
with
red.
what's the deal with foot fetishes? We'll start out with an easy one.
Oh, yes, he showed me it just before you even said that. He showed me his big foot.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yes, yes,
What
yes.
is it with
Okay.
that?
What is that, Eric? He says it's no different than somebody who really enjoys lips or somebody who really appreciates eyes.
Okay.
He goes, now, okay. He's showing me something to do with childhood. So, like, you know how a baby puts their feet in their mouth? Like, he's
Yes.
showing me a little baby putting
Yeah.
their feet in the mouth, and it has to do with some form of like something to do with the mother, an
Maybe
attachment with the
suckling, like
mother.
sucking on toes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. All right. What about S&M, sadism, masochism on both sides? Why?
Um, he says, so let's look at the polarities of, he says, we're actually looking at feminine and masculine energy with this. This is because he says that this is it's not wrong. There's no judgment to it. It's not wrong unless it crosses lines where it becomes control, pain in a different kind of way. He says two consenting people can have an act that plays out the experiences of submissive and dominating. He said that often this comes from a pattern of something that they were not able to connect to within themselves during the formative years from one of their parents, whether male or female. He said it can be either or, and it can be a way of playing out that control. He said that there are a lot of sexual patterns that really do trace back to our parents.
Mm,
And he says
wow.
it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing,
No, no.
but he says there are reasons for it that are okay. And he said, and past life, some of that is within us as well. It's not all born completely from this life, but
Ah,
that a relationship with a parent,
mm.
or something in our life during those formative years can trigger that, or can bring that into the mind, the thought to fruition.
Oh, okay. So, like a sadist, what are they trying to play out? Maybe they were controlled too much by a parent in this life or
Um,
another, and they're trying
that
to reverse the roles.
it has a masculine. He said it's a masculine energy. So
Okay.
coming from feeling controlled, bullied. Um,
Mm.
he says it's not all. It's not when
That's
he says
many things.
masculine. He wants to understand it's. He's not saying just men, because
Okay.
there can be masculine energies that are
Oh,
women as
yeah.
well. But it's directed towards child again. Something that is when they felt in a weakened position.
Ah, what about the opposite, a masochist? Like, why do people want to be spanked and think they get off on that? You know, or even more than spanking, but this whole spanking deal, I don't get it. Doesn't sound fun to me. I'm not judging. I just
No,
want
he
to
says,
understand it.
and that's what he says too. He goes, it brings up feelings. He goes, again, it goes back to childhood. He says, look at the fetishes where there are people that want to be babies.
Oh yeah,
And they want to be babied. They want to
yes.
be cared for. He goes, it brings out this sexual, because it's like it's a sensation. It's this feeling of connection,
Oh,
and
okay.
it brings out this sensation, and that turns them on. It also releases, just like when we talk about sex and distracting from other things in one's life, but he keeps pointing this back to parents, to growing up. And he says it's not about blame, it's about experiences, and what kind of, he says, trickles in the patterns of
Okay.
the mind, and then it starts to come out with, say, when there's stress or other things going on in a person's life, that becomes some sense of release.
Okay. Three more. Necrophilia. People like to have that who enjoy having sex with dead bodies. What's behind that?
He says, oh, Michelle, this is a good one.
Mhm.
um, okay, he said that there's no politics involved.
Oh,
Nobody talks back. There's no expectations. There's some of a like having the experience, but there's a sense, a little bit of, and he says this isn't human, like a disrespect, but it's disrespect for the own person. It's like a not the person. Okay, slow down a little bit. Not the dead person, but the person who's having the act of sex with the dead person has they do not have self-respect.
Oh,
They do not respect themselves. They do not feel worthy enough for a partner or for somebody to accept them and
right.
who they truly are. He says there's more to the mind. There's more that goes on there
I can
than
imagine.
that.
But they probably don't, want to be judged for their performance and for themselves, etc. So, all right. What about coprophilia? It must have to do with potty training. I don't know. Wow.
Mm. Oh, okay. He's giving me a visual. Okay.
But don't throw
Um,
up. That's where people get
oral.
into poop, basically,
Yes, yes, yes.
They
And he
pooped
says that it's like,
on, well, I won't go there.
he says it's very similar to what we've been talking about with the
Mhm.
spanking and everything else like that. It brings out a sensation. He says if you go back to a baby or a child that puts their hands in their diaper
Oh,
and
yeah.
goes, "Oh, what's this?" And there, it brings back these sensations and the sensations of something that, okay, Erik says he'll give a little example here. There may have been a sensation that brought up a sense of sexual excitement when a child was young, when there was some kind of association to poop.
How? What
So,
kind? What could that be?
okay,
During the act of pooping?
being changed. And he says
Oh,
this is
being
very,
changed.
yeah, and he says, now understand, peeps, this is not something that's a conscious. It's not. It doesn't mean anything happened,
Oh, yeah.
and it's not conscious. This is embedded in the subconscious, and it comes out for different reasons. Sometimes it doesn't come out. It doesn't mean it happens with absolutely everybody, but these are how these things can be born within us. And he's also saying you can have predispositions to things,
Oh,
and then these little experiences happen that bring it out later in life, or
yeah.
he
So,
says in some
so,
cases never goes away.
so it's like somebody may have been in another life or this life fondled when they were being changed from of their poopy
Yes,
diapers.
yes.
Oh, all right. Last one, bestiality. What's behind? I bet that's the same as necrophilia. Whatever. The goat's not
Yes,
going to really be a judge.
yes, yes. He showed a donkey. He
Oh,
showed a donkey.
okay.
Yes, and he said he's talking about evolution as well. So about like prehistoric time, like way back then when it was like it not understood what animals thought or that they were different than us.
Okay.
um, that there was like it was okay to be with an animal because they did that as well, and so it just didn't seem, it was more of a across the board. And as we evolved away from that, but there are some cultures that um, uh, that it was a practice or it was a like a threat or a like this will happen to you. He says it can go back to ancient
Wait, this will
times.
happen to who? Threatening the animal or the person
No,
owning the animal or what?
so okay, can you give me an example, Erik? Okay, so he said like witchcraft, like dark dark
Oh,
dark
okay.
magic. Yeah,
Okay.
like this goat man will have sex with you, or this it's like combined it they okay. He's saying like religion made it like something that was done as an evil act, looking back at bestiality being something that happened back in the ancient times.
Mm-hmm.
um, and he says that as times move forward, there are different areas of the world that as we grew to understand, it was like a crime against nature to do
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And so he's talking about cultures. Not everybody, this is over a long period of time, not everybody understanding in the same ways that some cultures looked at it differently than
Okay.
say in our society.
Well, we got through it. Woo! Okay, so one last question. Anything else you want to share about sex and any facet of it?
He just put his okay, I'll do it. He put his arms up and he goes, "Sex is great. There is nothing wrong with it." He says, "Do it, but do it safe from your heart." He says, "Remember that it's also every act that we do, everything that we do, we need to consider ourselves first and our best interest." And he says, so take the judgment out of sex.
Right.
Take the judgment out of yourself, because it's a very natural and very normal thing. And he says all of the judgment and the stuff on top of it just makes it messy and cloudy. He's like, it's love. It's connection. So there's nothing wrong with it.
That's awesome. Hallelujah. Thank you, Michelle.
Woo!
And thank you, Eric. Oh my God, you were so brave, Michelle. Thank you, Eric. I love you. Michelle, I can't wait to see you pretty soon. And
I know.
this will probably be posted after, after I think, but it's okay. So you guys get in touch with her at the H dash E. Yeah.
The
healing.
healing.
The healing h.art.com.
Yes.
And I'll
Yes.
put it here. So, don't listen to what I say. Just look at what I write. Bye.
Bye.
Love you,
See you
Michelle.
soon. Love you too. He says, bye, Mama. Love you.
I love you.